Hi, welcome everybody to the February 26th City of Mesa Planning and Zoning public hearing. Welcome everybody here, and we'll begin by taking a roll call. So chair is myself, I am present. Board member Peterson.
Here.
Board member Blakeman.
Here.
Board member Carpenter.
Here.
And we'll excuse Vice Chair Pitcher and Board member Montes and Farnsworth. So as part of the agenda for today, we do have a consent agenda. This will be read into and acted on in one motion for the record, and these will not be discussed individually. It's a very long consent agenda today, and Board Member Peterson has offered to read that for us. Are you prepared?
The items on the consent agenda for the February 26, 2025 Planning and Zoning Board meeting are item 2A, minutes from the February 12th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Board meeting, and item 3A, ZON 24-00548, SAIA Motor Freight Lines, 13 plus or minus acres located approximately 1,900 feet east of the southeast corner of East Pecos Road and South Chrisman Road, site plan review for freight truck terminal and warehouse. The recommendation is for continuation to the March 26, 2025 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. And that concludes the consent agenda.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Motion to approve.
Is there a
Second.
All right, all in favor? And that is unanimously approved for the consent. Thank you, Troy, for reading that today. All right, we will move on in our agenda to the first case that we'll be looking at, which is item 3B, the Dixon property. No mic.
Is this on?
There it is. Oh, there it goes.
Thank you, Chair and board members. This is case ZON 24-00756. The request is to rezone approximately 2.5 acres from single residence 35 to single residence 35 with a bonus intensity zone overlay. And it's to allow for development of a new single residence on the eastern portion of this project site. The location is approximately 1,100 feet south of McKellips Road on the east side of Val Vista Drive. The general plan character area per the Mesa 2040 general plan is neighborhood with a citrus sub-area. The intent of this area is to provide safe places for people to live, feel secure, and enjoy their community. And the citrus sub-area plan supports large lot, single residence developments. The requested zoning is single residence 35 with a bonus intensity zone overlay. And the bonus intensity zone overlay, or the BIZ overlay, allows some variations to certain development standards, for example, setbacks and so forth. Single residences are permitted uses in the RS 35 district. This slide shows a photo of the site looking east from the northern driveway into the site off of Val Vista Drive. And you can see the existing residence. And this slide shows a photo looking east from the southern driveway off of Val Vista Drive. This shows the second existing driveway into the site. And this is the driveway that will also be shared with the new residence to the east. This slide shows the site plan. You can see Lot 1 and Lot 2. Lot 2 is being reconfigured to be what's called a flag lot because it's shaped like a flag on a flagpole. The narrow portion of the property stretches west and fronts onto Val Vista Drive. As part of the requirements of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations, lots need to have frontage on a public street in order to be developable. So the request is to reconfigure this lot that's currently landlocked and make it have frontage onto Val Vista Drive. But the minimum lot width for the RS 35 district is 130 feet, and that narrow portion of the lot is only 20 feet. So that is one of the requests for modifications to the development standards, is to allow for a reduction to the minimum lot width for Lot 2. The BIZ is also requested for Lot 1 because of existing conditions on the property, including a detached accessory building that is located just 1 foot north of the proposed new property line, as well as an existing 7-foot fence along the front of the property that exceeds the maximum fence height in a front yard. This chart outlines those BIZ modifications for you. For example, the 20-foot minimum lot width, the 1-foot setback for the detached accessory building on Lot 1, and then the maximum 7-foot fence height for Lot 1, just along the front. The applicant completed a citizen participation process, and they notified property owners within 1,000 feet of the site. They also completed their public notice requirements for noticing this hearing. Since then, staff has heard from neighbors located to the south of the site who had concerns about access to their properties, as well as access to the irrigation control valves or boxes located at the east end of Lot 2. The access to the property is in regards to an adjacent lot located south at the east end of the project site, and they currently share the southern driveway. And then the irrigation control valves is related to several properties located south of the site that access the irrigation control valves through this existing property. The applicant has explained that they are working with those neighbors to address those concerns. Staff finds that the request complies with the Mesa 2040 general plan. It also complies with Chapter 21 of the Mesa zoning ordinance for a BIZ overlay, and we recommend approval with conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And the applicant is here as well as some of the neighbors.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. See if there's any questions for staff at all. Does the applicant have a presentation, or would they like to? I'm guessing I see him coming up.
Due to a limited voice issue going on right now, maybe I'll just defer till after the neighbors and respond to comments.
I think that's fine, yeah. All right. So with that, then we'll move in, and we do have some public comment cards. So with that, as we go through just generally speaking, we've got several cards on both cases tonight. So we'd ask you, try to keep your comments to 3 minutes so we can get through these. We ask you to come up to the microphone, please state your name and your address for the record, and then we'll allow you to kind of speak to whatever you'd like to talk about on the case. I will just read them and have you come up in the order that they were handed to me, if that works for everybody. So the first person I have is Barbara Markowski, and I apologize if I'm bad on names. You can come right on up here, ma'am.
Chair Ayers, just a reminder to officially open the public comment portion of the hearing.
Let's officially open the public comment portion of this. You can come on up, you're good. And if you could just state your name and address for us.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Barbara Markowski. I've lived at 3658 East Indigo Circle in Anlin Estates, Mesa for 40 plus years. Of particular concern for me and my Anlin Estate neighbors south of the property being considered for rezoning is our continued access to our irrigation system. The property at 1870 North Alvista, the private drive adjacent to it, and the RCO's property all connect for access of the flood irrigation that we receive from Roosevelt Water Conservation District. Roosevelt delivers our water at a point up on McKellips, east of Alvista, which flows south across the property in question, and it terminates at Anlin Estates. Access to all the irrigation boxes and standpipes with gates and valves along the system must be accessible to all users at all times because Roosevelt delivers our water on a 13-day schedule every day, any day of the week, at all hours of the day and night. And in addition to that, access and control of the flow of the water is necessary to ensure that we users receive their designated allocations of water and no flooding or wasting of water occurs. The private drive of our neighbors, the Alarcios, has been used for unrestricted access to the irrigation system mentioned above for over 14 years. The private drive is part of the rezoning that is being considered today. On Tuesday, the Alarcios and I met with Eric Dixon, the owner of the property, and also his legal representative, Sean Lake, to discuss our access. Mr. Dixon did agree to grant access to the irrigation system on the drive and his property for users of the irrigation system, and if he's granted rezoning. However, this was only a verbal agreement and not a written agreement. 40 years ago, this area, known as the citrus area, was just flourishing with citrus trees everywhere. And as you know, over the course of time, Mesa has changed. We have grown tremendously. There's been a lot of development. And also, along with that, fences and walls have also increased. Previously, where we lived for irrigation, it was a farmer's road, open groves. We'd had no limitations in terms of walls and fences. But now there has been rezoning, more density, walls have gone up, fences have occurred, and access has become much more complicated in terms of getting to those irrigation systems that we need to get to.
Mrs. Markowski, if you could, we've already used the 3 minutes, so.
May I go just
Yeah,
finish
just a
it,
little
wrap
bit,
it
yeah,
up? Okay.
for sure.
20 years ago, in 2005, I stood before the City Planning and Zoning Board with a similar request to access to Annalena Estates irrigation system. So water is a necessity here in the desert, as you all know. So I'm requesting, as a condition of rezoning the property, that the board make irrigation access in writing a condition for recommending or granting this rezoning, because in the event that the property transfers to a new owner, having not only a verbal agreement, but a written agreement is imperative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your understanding. Thank you. Next up, I have, and I am not going to, Melanie, I'm going to say your last name wrong. Alazio, I can't read that very well, so I apologize. At least you know who you are, right?
Good afternoon. I am Melanie Alarcio. There you
that
go.
was close.
I'm at 1739 Northwell Vista Drive. So, good afternoon. I do have had questions that I hope are answered along the way. I wasn't able to attend the study session, but my frustration first, why did the city allow for this property to be split, knowing that the back lot has no direct access to the main street and is now disrupting the neighborhood? You know, the city created this issue. Why am I the one being adversely affected by this? So that's me, that's my emotion. It appears there may be a conflict, it's not real yet, I don't know yet, about property boundaries between the abutting properties to the south of 1807. Will this conflict about the boundaries impact the conditions to be considered in this rezoning plan? I don't know. Third, the existing driveway is a privately owned driveway, not a road, not a street, a driveway. And will this rezoning impact the status of ownership? Does this mean it belongs to the city now, or it still remains privately owned? Again, I don't know. And so we wanted to request, as part of this rezoning, to be written in, in writing, that, as discussed, we did discuss this with the property owner, Eric, and his agents and our representatives of the neighborhood. improving visibility and assure safety by appropriate widening of the currently existing narrow driveway to allow for secure bidirectional vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. It's too narrow. Guaranteeing in writing unrestricted and unhindered access to the entire length of this driveway, utilizing, if needed, a written cross-access agreement to share this widened driveway on property, theirs and ours, without violations. Guaranteeing in writing unrestricted access to the irrigation gates, valves, and assure safety of vehicular and pedestrian traffic as the irrigation system is accessed. Guaranteeing in writing the least amount of disruption during construction, assuring safe entry and exit of vehicles and people, and mindful of the noise limits, because it's going to be noisy. And a written agreement per our discussion about constructing a new paved or better driveway in its entirety to ensure safety for all, and this allowing parking, especially long-term and large vehicles, on the driveway itself, which may block and also affect safe ingress and egress of vehicles and safety of pedestrians. Now, I'm aware this is between the property owners. But again, like Barbara mentioned, if it changes hands, if it's not in writing, what's a guarantee that these things are not going to change? And because we're landlocked at the back, we walk that driveway to access our mail, because our mailbox is on the street, and also trash, because the trash trucks are not going to go in. And so those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alderson. Next up, Andrew Gutierrez. There he is.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Andrew Gutierrez. My address is 3636 East Indigo Circle. I'm a neighbor to Barbara Mikulski, who spoke just before, and I'm here to advocate for our access to the irrigation valve. We're kind of the last on the rung to receive water, so if we can't get access to that valve, to open it, to repair and or maintain it, that impacts our properties. I was downstairs when I was hearing you guys discuss this case. You guys said normally the city takes a kind of a hands-off approach. I don't think that's the case. There's a development just east of us called Cobblestone Properties, and the zoning department required an easement to be made to get to our box for that. And that easement, that parcel was created of 141-30-127, where Barbara was at the meeting, and you guys granted that development as long as they gave us easement to get to our water. That is the last kind of valve on the system. So I don't know that an easement, but some sort of access agreement I would suggest needs to happen. As Barbara said, walls are going up. This is getting more difficult. This is a beautiful place in the city, kind of a green belt. If the irrigation goes away, some of the value of that property goes away. So either, I know they've met with the owner and representative. I haven't had the opportunity. Maybe we can work that out privately. Either, I would say, require an access agreement for the zoning, or allow us to give us some more time before you make a decision, see if we can privately kind of work through these issues. And that's kind of what I'm advocating for. So I think we should be able to have access to it. We've had access to it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. All right, and I think that's the last one for this case that I have. So with that, we'll invite the applicant to come up.
In the old days, we push F5. Does that still work? Apparently, function.
On your slide projector.
I have a slide projector. Easy. Board members, it's difficult for me not to have freedom of speech, but my voice is somewhat limited here. this evening, but I appreciate the opportunity to be before you this evening. We're here really to talk about a flag lot, large lot custom home, which is very consistent with this area. For those that have driven up and down Val Vista, you have quite a few of these estate-type lots in and around this area. My client, Mr. Dixon, has purchased the property, which is on the north, which is the home on the front, and then the vacant lot on the back, and is proposing to split off the back 1.3 acres and build his home for his family. The neighbors who, to speak of, that are here, Melanie, who did a great job, very nice lady, met with her and her husband and son. They live in the red house at the end of that private drive. I found it interesting that she uses the private drive to get to her lot in the back, but she didn't want you to approve Mr. Dixon to allow him to use the private drive to get to his lot and split that off. I think, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and so we would hope that Mr. Dixon would be afforded the same rights that that property owner had to the south to allow them to split off that back piece. We also met with the neighbors on irrigation. That seemed to be the big point that was raised. Here's a slide that represents what is there. In the red circle is the existing irrigation valve. It is in a state of disrepair. It leaks. It's a problem. Mr. Dixon, at his own expense, will be redoing and relocating that irrigation valve to the green circle, which is even closer to the existing private drive. And now you'll notice the assessor's pretty close from our opinion. Half of that private drive is located on our property, and half of that private drive is located on the property owners who came here, Melanie and her husband, as well as the assisted living there. So they have the opportunity to continue to provide access to that valve as well off of that private drive. We're willing to certainly work with them on it, but as was the case on the project that we just had in McDowell, we would object to using the city's exaction authority or power to require a property owner to dedicate an easement that has no nexus or connection to what is being asked. And so we talked about that. I think the U.S. Supreme Court recently had a decision that the city has to meet Nolan and Dolan and have an essential nexus on all administrative and legislative actions. We're happy to work with them. I just don't want to be put into a position where I have to agree to an access or the cross-access. Condition number 1 of our case does talk about cross-access, but understanding to have cross-access, we not only need to sign, but the property owners to the south need to sign as well, thus cross-access. And so we want to make sure that's part of the record, that we're happy to work with them and sign an agreement for that cross-access, but they also have to be part of the agreement. If they refuse to sign it, there's not much I can do. So we'll continue to work with them, and that is condition number 1 on that cross-access. We have zero intention. There was a property owner 2 parties ago, I believe, who was less than friendly, and I think Mr. Dixon has been nothing but nice and gracious and willing to work with them. He's offered to go work with the neighbors and split the cost to repave the road, to go in and move things as part of his project. He will be widening that curb cut for those that drove by and drove down that private drive. He'll be widening that access out onto Val Vista. He will be moving his wall to create those site visibility triangles. So he will be substantially improving the situation. And he's willing to work with them, but there's a difference between working with them in a friendly, neighborly manner and working with somebody who has a hammer over your head. So that's kind of where we're at. We would object to a condition that requires us to do something that we don't think that the city has authority to do. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to go over the project or my whole presentation if you so choose.
Any questions? Jason, go for it.
Just a quick question on the, just looking at the proposed lot split. Hopefully I got that right. So there's the 20 feet that are on the abutting lot 1 for the cross access and ingress egress easement, but it looks like it stops at the the new lot line that would create Lot 2, the south side of Lot 2, sorry, I'm not looking at the same thing as you are. It looks like where the wall will be placed, it shrinks it down to where there's still a buffer between the south property line and the new proposed wall so it should be about 10 to 12 feet.
Yeah, let's pull up the site plan. So there will be that new valve, we're talking irrigation, I'm assuming. That new valve will have a gate off of that wall to get to the valve.
Okay.
Does that,
It does, I'm curious
just
if,
for aesthetic purposes,
okay,
obviously.
okay. So you're not proposing to put,
A wall and then
Right on the
new
south
valve
property
with
line.
No, they will have access off of the private drive to get to the valve.
so the private drive will continue, it'll just maybe shrink. It appears that it's maybe 40 feet, 20 feet on either side of the property line, and maybe get slimmed down.
It looks to be about that. We're actually going to be adding to it on our side, and we're going to be adding some blacktop on our side as well. So it will be wider. And then that new wall will have a gate through it to get to the new valve in the new location. So they will have access. They've been accessing off of it for 40 years, it sounds like. So
it'll
and they
be-
haven't had anything written. I mean, it's just neighbors working together. I mean, everywhere in this area, we access irrigation valves, and I'm convinced there aren't irrigation easements that are required by the city anywhere.
So the new valve would be outside of south of the new wall area is what I'm asking.
It would be inside it, but there would be a gate in the wall
To
to
get
get
to
to
it.
the valve.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But the road does continue all the way to the east property line now.
And it will
Currently,
continue?
and it will continue. Half of that road is in Melanie's, their name. We actually had it staked. I went out there today and I kind of used your driveway to turn around. We talked about that yesterday. I didn't back in too much, but we had it staked by a surveyor, and the pins are, for the most part, in the middle of the road. So you've got half of that road that would be theirs, half at ours, and then condition number one means we'll work together with them to have that cross access.
All right, thank you.
I think this has been answered, but just to confirm, the nothing that is proposed with the either Lot 1 or Lot 2 will reduce the existing asphalt on the existing driveway that's there, right? That stays like it is?
Correct, it actually will be more.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Jamie, anything? No. I don't think I have anything. I think we're good.
Thank you.
Chair Ayers, if I could just add, one of the questions that was asked, and I think Jenny or Evan can come up and answer this, about why the backlot was created, just for the board's information, how that was done. And then just for clarification, this will not be a public street. This is going to be a private matter. But maybe Evan or Jenny could come up and talk about how that backlot was created.
Okay.
And Chair Ayers, since we're going to staff
Oh, we need to
questions-
close public comments.
Oh.
Officially closing public comment. It's okay.
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Nope, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and board members. In the city's process, there is a requirement for land splits to come through an administrative process through planning. But this existing landlocked parcel was not reviewed through planning. It was recorded through the county without city review.
Okay, so this was previous to city being in here, basically is what you're saying.
It was done without city review.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And
Appreciate that information.
If I could clarify one thing, condition number 1 is a requirement of a cross-access easement between Lot 1 and Lot 2.
Yes, not to the south. Yes. we
Correct.
Completely understand that.
Thank you.
Anything else for staff? No, okay. Well, with that, just to reiterate, I'm going to close public comment on this one and open this up to board discussion, or if anyone would like to make a motion.
So just some thoughts. It's, I'm an RWCD customer as well. I mean, it's just part of, like was discussed. You just work with your neighbors and work things out, and usually that works out well. And I think from the discussion before that as far as what this board has purview over, the items are in line. There's some things that the neighbors just need to agree upon between themselves. But as far as what we have purview over, I think I'm fine with how it's proposed.
Anything else? You want to go ahead and make a motion?
Sure. Motion to approve item 3B, ZON 24-00756, Dixon property, 2.5 acres located approximately 1,100 feet south of the southeast corner of East McKellips Road and North Val Vista Drive, rezoned from single residence 35 to single residence 35 with a bonus intensity zone overlay for the development of one single residence. Recommendation is approval with conditions.
All right, thank you. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
All right, then everyone, and please vote. And that passes unanimously with 4 people on the board here. So appreciate everybody's time. We will now move on to item 3C, the Park North multifamily. Is that another one? Okay. Yeah, that's not a C. Okay, thank you.
Chair and board members, this is zoning case ZON 24-00708, and it's a request to rezone the subject property from limited commercial with a planned area development overlay to limited commercial with a new planned area development overlay, a council use permit, and site plan review. And this would allow for a multiple residence development. The location of the property is east of Power Road, on the north side of Guadalupe, and it's highlighted on the slide before you. This is a photo of the site. This is a photo of the site looking north from Guadalupe Road. Oops. And then this is a photo of the site looking south from Monterey Park. So the general plan designation for this property is neighborhood with a suburban subtype. And the intent of the neighborhood character area is to provide safe places for people to live where they feel secure and enjoy their surroundings. Primarily, these character areas are single residence in nature. This character area may also contain areas of multiple residence properties and commercial uses along arterial frontage and at major intersections. The zoning on the property is, as mentioned, limited commercial with a planned area development. And the proposed rezoning is also for limited commercial with a planned area development. And then a council use permit to allow the construction of the multiple residences, but it's also requesting a deviation from the LC standards that permit the multiple residence construction by right. And then a planned area development overlay to allow for modifications to the development standard. So a little more about multiple residence uses in a limited commercial district. The zoning ordinance permits the multiple residence uses if 60% of the ground floor of a single building is reserved for commercial uses, and a total of 65% of ground floor of all buildings is reserved for commercial uses. And then the density of the project does not exceed 25 dwelling units per acre. In our zoning ordinance, a council use permit is required to modify any of this criteria, and in this case, the applicant is requesting to eliminate the commercial ground floor area requirements. So the site plan shows 2 3-story apartment buildings, which have 36 dwelling units each, and then 2 3-story apartment buildings that have 24 units each. There's a clubhouse and leasing office building provided on the site. Access to the property is provided from Guadalupe over a bridge across the Maricopa County Flood Control District flood control district canal. And then an emergency egress is provided via an access easement to property to the west. In compliance with the zoning ordinance, 252 spaces are provided, 252 parking spaces are required, and they are providing the required 122 covered parking spaces. In your staff reports, we've outlined the planned area development deviations. I can go through those deviations if you would like me to, but I would want to point out one specific deviation and just clarify it. And that's related to the setback along property lines to building and parking areas. So those deviations outlined indicate that 0 feet is provided along the south side of the property. If I go back to the site plan, that's where the subject property is adjacent to the Maricopa County Flood Control District. So that setback to parking area or the drive aisle is 0. And then on the interior side to the west and then to the north, excuse me, so the setback on the west side is required to be 15 feet to the parking area and to the covered parking structures. In this case, oops, excuse me, I keep touching that. It's only 5 feet, okay? And then to the north and to the east, where the setback to the building and parking area is normally 75 feet, they're requesting 5 feet on those areas. That would be to the parking structures on each of those sides. I think there's a little confusion on this slide. The distance on the west is actually 15 feet. Excuse me, the distance on the east is actually 15 feet, so I'm confused. Are there any other questions that you might have about the PAD modifications?
I don't. I think we've all read through this, so I think we're good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so the plan obviously also includes a landscape plan. There's some specific landscaping improvements that are being proposed for this property. One is that the property, the applicant will work with Maricopa County Flood Control District to provide landscaping adjacent to Guadalupe Road. And then on the north side of the project, in the 5-foot landscape area that's along the north property line on the subject property, they will be installing the required number of shrubs. And on the north side of that property line in the Monterey Park, they will work with the City of Mesa Parks and Recreation Department to install the required trees on the north side of the property line in Monterey Park. Around the rest of the perimeter of the site, they are installing the landscaping in compliance with the zoning ordinance requirements. Also, they were complying with the requirements within the parking lot islands and around the foundation of the building. This is a slide that just shows the common space amenity area around the clubhouse. We have a few renderings that were provided by the applicant. This is looking towards at the site and then looking generally to the northeast. You can see its location next to Monterey Park. And then this is looking from the northeast, looking more towards the west. This is a rendering of the entry into the park, or excuse me, into the site, and then close up of the clubhouse area. And then the pool area. So I will mention that this project was reviewed by the Design Review Board on the 11th. And the Design Review Board was very complimentary about this project. They did make one recommendation, and that was to provide another access to the park. Previously, the applicant had suggested to provide 2 accesses, but during the conversations with the park, it was determined because of future improvements in Monterey Park that at this time 1 access is what was needed. So moving on to the council use permit criteria. We've outlined that criteria in your staff report. I'm happy to go through the slides and address any comments or concerns you might have about the council use permit criteria. discussion?
I'm not seeing anyone looking at me, so I think we're good on this.
Okay. So moving on, to summarize the citizen participation, the applicant did prepare a citizen participation plan and executed it. They held 2 neighborhood meetings. The first one was last March, and then they had a follow-up meeting in November. Both meetings were well attended, and they received many comments from the participants at the meeting. The summary of those, or the applicant's response to those comments and concerns that were made at the meetings is part of your citizen participation report. And then in addition, staff has received many emails about this project. So in your packet, we provided copies of those emails, and then we also had some that were some emails that we received after you received your packet, and we've provided you copies of those as well. And then I know that you've received many comments about this project as well. Chiefly, the chief concerns were the use itself. Traffic was a big concern, and then just safety in general was a concern of the neighborhood. So in summary, staff finds that the proposed project complies with the 2040 Mesa General Plan. It complies with the Chapter 69 of the Mesa Zoning Ordinance for site plan review, and complies with Chapter 22 of the zoning ordinance for a planned area development overlay, and complies with the criteria for a council use permit for residential uses in a commercial district per the requirements of Section 113131F, and the criteria for a council use permit in Section 1176D of the zoning ordinance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the project.
All right, thank you, Charlotte. Any questions for staff? Jamie? I have a couple, but I'm wondering if the applicant actually hit on those, so I'll wait to see after the applicant's presentation. So I think you're good. Okay. Thank you, Charlotte. So I'll go ahead and invite the applicant to come on up. Evan, be prepared for technical aid.
We'll stay there. Okay.
We got the F5. Thank you, Evan. Chair Ayers and members of the board, my name is John Gillespie. I'm a land use attorney with the Rose Law Group, 7144 East Stetson. The Park North project here, excited to discuss it. I like this rendering that Charlotte did share. It gives a good perspective of what's being proposed here. This is a multifamily project with elevated architecture. The primary entrance and the single entrance that's allowed across the canal there to a major arterial road, and we're surrounded by a beautiful public park with commercial to the west of the project. This aerial here just illustrates those conditions and the really significant buffering to the residential around us and the integration into the surrounding land use. Go through just quickly some of the zoning history for this site. So the site is zoned limited commercial today, and it was zoned in 2010. When it was rezoned to limited commercial, it was done with a PAD for a commercial development for offices and for retail uses. For 15 years, commercial options have been pursued. Nothing has proved to be viable. There's a few reasons for that, but multifamily residential is an allowed use in the limited commercial. We're seeking a council use permit to modify some of the standards related to that multifamily by right use. Some of the constraints for commercial use, you see here, we're that small red dot to the north there, and then these green areas show that there are vast amounts of commercial zoned property that is currently undeveloped, and that supply exists there. We did some studies on that, and Elliott Pollock, a reputable economic group, studied those available commercial areas, and they saw that it aligns almost exactly with the demand for retail that is currently in this part of Mesa. Some of the other, and so that just illustrates that in terms of demand for commercial, without this site, the demand is met with the current supply. Our site specifically has some significant restraints. One of them is the access. So we have an 80-foot wide Maricopa County Flood Control District canal that they only allow one bridge across that. You go to a commercial developer and they look at that and say, oh, that one access point? No, we're walking away from that. There's other restrictions from the flood control district. There's deed restrictions that actually limit the actual commercial uses that can be developed at this site. A big one is the proximity to the school to the south, restrictions on alcohol sales. So if a restaurant wanted to develop here, it couldn't because there's a restriction on alcohol sales. And I mentioned the kind of the oversupply that's detailed in this slide here and called out there in red of what the demand is and the existing vacancy. That last bullet there says that the expected retail demand over the next 40 years can nearly be entirely accommodated within the current vacant retail space in the market area. So we've looked at this, the development team, the ownership team, they've sought to develop it with other commercial uses, and it has not proved viable for this site. The existing zoning and general plan supports multifamily from the standpoint of it's designated as a neighborhood character area, and a primary use in the neighborhood character area is multifamily residential. Limited commercial type uses are a secondary use. And so what's also being proposed here as somewhat a horizontal mixed use development also complies with the general plan. And we've designed the site to integrate to the commercial that's to the west of us. One of the key aspects there is the commercial west of us had a site plan approved by the city of Mesa. That site plan that was approved actually conflicts with existing easement rights with our property. And so in order to execute this horizontal mixed use, this development would need to be approved, and then that previously approved development would be able to develop along with it. And this kind of details some of that with the neighboring property. So some of these key aspects, staff's done a great job describing. So 120 luxury apartment units. So this is a market rate proposal with a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The entry into the site is met with a beautiful clubhouse and amenity area, a mural, public art that we've worked with to really elevate the design standards for this project. And a lot of attention's been put into for the benefit of the residents to integrate into the park and to have pedestrian access, and then as well to the proposed commercial to the west. Another key feature that the project itself meets all the standards for parking. There's no parking reduction that's being requested for this project, and the parking needs will be met on site. As was mentioned, design review reviewed the architecture, gave high marks to the architecture and the landscape design, and we're really proud of the plan that's been put together for this project. You can see a mix of materials and articulation in the building, really make it a high quality multifamily project in the city. Some of the other aspects, in addition to the pedestrian connections being made, we're going to install new trees on the north side, on the park side of the project to beautify the park and to provide a buffer to our development. We're putting in 18 new electric vehicle charging stations, so it's going to be up to modern standards for the site. And the landscaping improvements are going to be put in along the Maricopa County flood controls on the south side between Guadalupe and the canal. So that's an elevated landscape that's going to be installed. The site itself, while there's plenty of common open space interior to our project, and then obviously with a park, it doesn't stop at that. The balconies and the patios all meet the standards of the city for private open space, and no deviations are being requested on that aspect. Architects doing a lot of things with the mural. Rainwater harvesting, they're taking rainwater and diverting it into landscape. So really some good thoughts gone into this. It's an ideal site for multifamily use for a couple of reasons. The proximity to the arterial streets, 2 major arterial streets in the city of Mesa, being surrounded by Monterey Park provides a significant buffer to the residents, 900 feet to the north and to the east, 500 feet across Guadalupe. That's a huge buffer, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb at saying that is this is the most well-buffered multifamily project in the city of Mesa. And again, the setback from Guadalupe also creates a buffer from the street because of the canal. We'll talk a little bit more. There's been a lot of good neighbor feedback and discussion that's happened on this project, primarily from the Superstition Springs community, and we sit there on the southwest corner of that community. Staff talked about the council use permit, and just to kind of reemphasize that aspect, that the way that it's being done, the limited commercial zoning stays with the site, which does allow multifamily use. The council use permit is just modifying it to allow the multifamily, because we've seen that other commercial uses are not viable for the site. We did implement a good neighbor policy with the neighbors and with the city that will help to ensure that our residents are not infringing on the park's rights and don't have issues with noise or lights coming from the park. City planning staff and the city economic development department have reviewed and issued their recommendation of approval. Economic development obviously reviewed our economic study and the conditions of the site to issue that recommendation. The PAD modifications are really technical in nature because of the site constraints with the canal and the proximity to the park. Where the park is technically zoned residential, that would create some setback requirements, and so that's the reason that we need some of those modifications, and doesn't have a real impact on any of our surrounding properties. So we did hold 2 neighborhood meetings. We had significant attendance, 32 at the first meeting, and the attendance has dropped as more familiarity has come with the project. There's also been a lot of discussion on online platforms, and the 2 big things that we are hearing is traffic and the school impact. So to talk about traffic, and I do have Paul Basha, who is engaged as a professional traffic engineer from Summit Engineering to analyze this site. He's here tonight, and he's happy to answer any questions that the board or neighbors might raise. Guadalupe Road is a built-out 6-lane arterial. That arterial is designed to have 40,000 cars passing on it every single day. The city of Mesa has done traffic volume counts, and a little over 12,000 cars on an average day traverse the road. So Guadalupe Road is currently under its design capacity. And when you think in the context of these numbers here, the proposal here is for a 120-unit multifamily project next to that major arterial. There's a traffic consideration with the alignment of our access, and so what we did there is we aligned our access directly with the Highland Junior High across the street in order to mitigate safety concerns. And our traffic engineer has also studied the school drop-off times and pickup times and the peak hour traffic movements, and has determined that there's not a significant impact on traffic movement or safety. We also studied the intersection of Power and Guadalupe, because we heard that it's concerns about the number of incidents at that intersection, and we've found that Power and Guadalupe is kind of middle of the road in terms of compared to other major arterials in the city. This illustrates kind of that main access point, and then in the star there, you'll see that's where our residents would walk to school, and it's where the Superstition Springs residents' children also would walk across the school. Continue. So even though a traffic study isn't typically done on a project like this in Mesa, we did go above and beyond to do that, to try to describe the situation and analyze the situation. What was found is 48% to 71% less traffic is going to be created with this proposal as opposed to the 2010 approved office and retail proposal. And so the most recent approval from the city, we are going to be generating 48% to 71% less traffic at different times of the day. We also did an analysis of, okay, well, what if we built it out without a CUP, just with the existing zoning, with multifamily above ground floor commercial? What would be the traffic impact there? And what the study revealed was that 50% to 70% less traffic impact if we built it in that by right manner. So if the site develops according to, without a CUP, we've just determined that there will be a far more significant traffic impact on the road. And so if the main concern of neighbors is about traffic, then Park North really is the best development option. The school comments about overcrowding of schools, we reached out to the Gilbert School District, and they confirmed that they have capacity, they need students, and we will not provide an undue burden on their existing class sizing. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that I might have. I don't know, Chair Ayers, if I answer the question, I know that was a long slides. I tried to get through it there, but we're grateful for the review. And just in synopsis, that the proposal for, we evaluated whether commercial use was possible at the site. The studies are showing that it's not, so we looked at multifamily, which is approved, but because commercial is not viable at the site, we want to remove that commercial aspect to it. And the outcome of developing a multifamily project really yields a lower traffic development than other properties and other proposals. And we think this is a really well-buffered, beautiful site that's going to integrate well in this area and provide an excellent housing option to the city of Mesa. I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Appreciate it. Question? You hit most of mine. I just got a couple. They're pretty minor, frankly. So appreciate the landscape being added basically off your property, both on the south and the north. Curious if irrigation is being provided as part of that, as well as maintenance, or is that back on the city? That's going to be one of the ones that I think might be a little bit of an issue for.
Yeah, Chair Ayers. So the irrigation responsibilities with most developments actually rests on the applicant or the developer for a certain number of years, and then the trees kind of grow on their own, and so that requirement there. But we're proposing to enter into a development agreement with the city of Mesa that we will maintain the trees on the north, that's on the park side, and we'll landscape those, and then the city will take that over after a number of years. And then you're right, the installation of shrubs along the right-of-way of Guadalupe, that's on the developer to put that in and to meet the standards of the flood control district with that.
So that'll be in the DA as well. Okay. I think you hit every other question I have. It sounds like you guys are good. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you. All right. So with that, we do have public comment as well on this one. So I'm officially opening public commentary. Again, same things as what was said before, guys. We have a significant number of these here today. So if I ask you to try to keep it to 3 minutes, it would be helpful as we try to get through these. As well as just please come up and state your name and address. And I apologize up front if I mispronounce your names as well. So again, just go with the pile I have. So the first name I have is Bonnie Hickman. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Board. My name is Bonnie Hickman, and I reside at 7238 East Nido Avenue. I have been in Superstition Springs community. We were the third house built in 1995, so been there a while. I am a teacher in the school district in Gilbert, and so I concur with the fact that, yeah, we do have room for the kids. If you're looking at 120 apartments, probably we're looking at a minimum of maybe 200 kids minimum that are going to be moving into probably Superstition Springs Elementary. I do have some real concerns, though. I've lived in the area long enough to know that that road is dangerous. One of the biggest issues that I'm seeing when I went through this is if you're talking 120 units, and I counted all the little squares, and I was off by 8. You had 252, I came up with 260. 252 parking spots. That means even if you assume that only 1.5 cars per apartment. You're looking at 180 minimum cars entering onto Guadalupe. That is directly across the street from Highland Junior High. As it is a ridiculously dangerous intersection. What I would like to request that the board do is that you require not only the, he did a traffic study, but I would like there to be a safety study on the number of accidents and incidences that have occurred in the middle of Power and Guadalupe. Here's the problem. I was a witness to one of the accidents, and if the accident happens in the middle of Power, you have to call the sheriff because it's county. If it happens on the east side, you have to call Mesa. If it happens on the west side, you have to call Gilbert. We had to wait until 3 units came to make the report. So if you're pulling up a safety study, they need to pull from all 3 of those locations to make sure of what's going on, because that place it's a nightmare. When you look at what's coming from Power, going from south, coming up the street, we have that big organization that's, the big buildings and whatnot that are down there, plus the new Fry's. The traffic is going to be ridiculous. It already is, and it's dangerous. Another issue I'm concerned about is access to the park. There's no wall back there, it doesn't look like, behind the facility, which means they get full access to the park, and there's no wall. We have a potential increase for crime. Plus, he mentioned there's a conflict with this Dr. One LLC, which is basically in 2-point font on the stuff we got in the mail. But I'm assuming that's what he's talking about, is that on the west, where that existing whatever thing is, that shopette was, you've got something called Dr. One LLC that he's now saying is in conflict. And he's saying that there is going to be emergency access. No, the emergency egress is going to go through the middle of the QT Drive, and they're going to be hauling butt around the park that's over there. And it is going to be a problem. I know that the city had requested to purchase the property from the individual who owns the land, and he refused to sell to the city. That's what would have been the best plan, would be to sell it and then to use it as addition for the park. But having one entrance, one exit is going to be a problem. And I have some real concerns. And by the way, I thought it was interesting that it's upfront planning. I was at the first meeting, and there were 32 people at the first meeting, as he said, but notice he didn't say anything about what the second number was. Well, the reason is, I got my notice it was postmarked November 13th. The meeting was the 14th. I didn't even get the notification about the meeting until after it had happened. So I see that as a bit of a problem and not upfront. So I am just concerned that we are going to be inviting. It's not that I want people to not have a place to live. They need a place to live. But I think that this is not a great location, and I think they're forcing it. So with that, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, Ms. Hickman.
Chair Ayers, I just wanted to remind you that we do have Andrew online as well, who had requested to speak.
No, I just had him at the bottom. Actually, let's do that one now, actually. So Andrew Clayton, I believe, right? Can you hear us okay, Andrew?
You should be able to unmute yourself, Andrew.
Hello there.
Hi, could you just
Can you hear me?
name and address for us?
Perfect. Hello. I am Andrew Clayton. I am a resident of 7458 East Lobo Avenue, and I've been a member of the Superstition Springs community for 10 years. The owner and his developers held 2 community meetings last year for our input, and literally no one spoke in favor of this complex. The first proposal submitted included 88 townhomes. After the community meeting, the number rose to 120. They don't seem to understand or care that this increase exacerbates our concern of traffic and safety for our children, Highland Union and Superstition Springs, and the intersection as a whole. They only seem interested in what they can make on their bottom line. Our primary concern is this is an extremely dangerous intersection, and Bonnie touched on this as well. This includes a fatality just over a year ago, and as recently as February 19th, what's that, like a week ago? Today, a Highland Junior student was taken away on a stretcher after an accident at that same intersection. Developers anticipate with 120 new families, this would add a minimum of 252 additional cars. This means more cars attempted to, in some cases, illegally, and in many cases, dangerously cross Guadalupe to go east or cause more traffic going west during school times. When residents inevitably have more cars or guests visit, there's going to be a lack of parking spaces. The excess cars are going to end up using the parking lot of Monterey Park as an overflow and use the proposed walkway to get from the park back to the apartments. The site plan doc stated, quote, Excolo and the future property manager will monitor and control the parking situation and will adjust as needed to maintain adequate on-site parking on-site and ensure it is not impactful to the adjoining commercial corner or the city park, end quote. Good neighbor policy. Will security be monitoring this? Local police, will they be ticketing or towing cars or anything like that? And how exactly do you plan to monitor and control that situation? Another quote, according to the traffic study, the Park North project will generate 48 to 71% less additional traffic depending on the time of day than any of the commercial, retail, or office uses previously proposed and currently approved for the site. Nevertheless, should legitimate traffic-related complaints or safety concerns arise, Excolo and or the future property manager will work with the city on mutually agreeable mitigation measures to address these concerns. However, this project will generate 100% more traffic during concerning school times than if it were incorporated into Monterey Park and used evenings and weekends as a food truck community, for example, for all the community to join in on. And additionally, what if a child is seriously injured or killed, as we've seen at that intersection, due to the exponential increase in drivers at that intersection? Understanding the city would like to have more affordable housing, fully understand that. But these luxury apartments are not the way to go. We want this land to go back to the city, and my neighbors and I are ready and willing to fight and do whatever we can to raise awareness, money, donations, whatever, plead our case, so that you will also do what you can to buy back this land and incorporate it into Monterey Park. I hope staff will reconsider the recommendation of approval and instead recommend denial, or at least delay this approval until you yourselves have the opportunity to visit the site, see the school traffic, the school kids crossing that street, Guadalupe and Power every single day. The traffic that is lined up along Guadalupe backed up into Power intersection, and you'll see all the inevitable safety issues that are going to arise. What I saw on the map on the presentation that was provided, when they showed the picture from the northeast, it did not highlight the impact that it was going to have on Highland Junior. It doesn't show the amount of traffic going by. It doesn't show the buses. It doesn't show the people, the kids crossing the street every day, the U-turns, all the dangerous traffic that goes on there. It was taken from a much lower angle, so you could not see the impact that was going on. That is deceptive from the developer. Some of the maps did not even include Highland Junior highlighted on them.
We appreciate
So
it.
that is deceptive. I don't like what they did, and I feel very strongly against this proposal.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments.
Thanks for hearing me. I appreciate it.
All right, I have the next one here. Alicia Kakula? Did I do that? How bad was that?
It's Kukula, but she isn't speaking. She just wanted to let you know she's here to show her opposition.
Okay, thank you very much. April Lesher.
My name is April Lesher, and I live at 7558 East Lobo Avenue, and I have lived there for 10 years. I'm here today to share my concerns over the proposed development of the Park North Apartments. My largest concern is the increased traffic this development will cause. Currently, the plan from the developer has 252 parking spaces, 252 vehicles added to an already dangerous street. In an earlier proposal, the same developer asked to build 88 townhomes, which was denied. Now the City of Mesa has completed its pickleball courts, baseball fields, and library construction at Monterey Park. The developer now wants to add 120 units. They want to put a premium price on the maximum number of units to profit off our tax dollars. I'm 100% for affordable housing, but this isn't that. A 2-bedroom rental would be twice my home mortgage. Exolo is advertising and labeling it as luxury apartments with a clubhouse. As Andy said, what the pictures on the proposal did not show is that the project sits directly across from Guadalupe Row, which is Canyon Valley High School sits behind Highland Junior High with a 1,000 student population, and 0.5 miles down the street is Highland High School with 3,200 students. A third of those are juniors and seniors who can drive, but they're new drivers and they're not safe drivers. Let's talk about traffic safety. My own son was hit on his bike when he was riding his bike home from school. Imagine being a parent and seeing a mangled bike. He was wearing his helmet, so he walked away with scrapes and bruises. But last Wednesday, I also saw a Highland Junior student, I know because the principal was there, being taken away in an ambulance, and he was on a scooter. I've taken videos and pictures of the intersection to show it would be negligent for the city of Mesa to allow this development to go through. I encourage you to think about your legacy, because the first injury or worse that happens to a child on the stretch of road from a vehicle from the development would be the city of Mesa and the developer's legacy. Former council member Kevin Thompson is against this proposal, and current councilman Scott Summers is against this proposed development because they've seen the street and how dangerous it is to our community and the risk, the grave risk to our children. The legacy of Scott Summers and Kevin Thompson is that they fought for our kids and the safety of our community. I hope that before you make a decision, you visit the intersection of Power and Guadalupe at 340, between 340 and 350, and ask yourself if it's in the children's best interest to add additional traffic to the area. I'm in favor of suburban development, and there are other options for property development, such as Elliott and Sossaman. I'm also a realist, and I know the owner would like to make a return on their investment. I am certified in grant writing. I've written many grants for nonprofits, and I would be willing to write grants, pass the hat, do my part to raise funds for the city of Mesa so that we can purchase the property at a reasonable price to benefit both parties. Let our children be your legacy.
Thank you, Mrs. Lesher. Aaron Clayton. Oh, you're good. I've had to wear one of those for a while.
Thank you. My name is Erin Clayton. I reside at 7458 East Lobo Avenue, and I've been there for almost 10 years. I'm not against the Park North project, but I'm against the project in this location. Our community has consistently fought against rezoning or rebuilding that doesn't fit the character of the Superstition Springs neighborhood. I was disappointed to see that this project was on consent agenda, considering the citizen comments attached to this were overwhelmingly emails of opposition. It's not conducive to the safety of our children, and as we have heard and will probably hear more, I will focus on other areas of concern. The project neither meets any of the city's design guidelines or zoning guidelines, nor does it meet the 2040 general plan, a plan that we as citizens voted for. In fact, the current zoning is limited commercial, not residential, not mixed use, but limited commercial. According to Mesa Zoning Ordinance 113131, as you know, limited commercial areas are allowed if 65% of the floor is reserved for commercial development. But the developer must ask for a council use permit because they are not willing to do this. More units to rent out means higher profits. Their design has ignored not only zoning ordinance, but so many of the design guidelines that the city council approved just a few years ago to ensure quality development in Mesa. The developer feels that these deviations from the LZ zoning standards are justified because, quote, of the superior design elements. However, I do not feel an artist mural dog washing stations justify the deviations from these standards that keep our neighborhoods compliant with the good neighbor policy, safety concerns, and the general welfare of our city. For example, trees are required, 1 for every 25 linear foot, requiring 36 trees along the north property line. This design will input 0 trees on their parcel of land. They have offered to put them instead on the north wall. This is not on their property, but the city's property. Again, ignoring the guidelines to maximize the number of units to maximize their profits. Setbacks. Minimum distance a building must be from a property line, 75 feet to the north. These setbacks are for safety, privacy, environmental protections, access to utilities, access for public safety vehicles and personnel. This design shows only 65 feet on the north. They validate that because they say it's 900 feet from single-family homes or 115 from the pickleball courts. However, I don't think we should allow this because there's no reason to set aside these guidelines other than it maximizing their profits. The distance between buildings is supposed to be 30 feet. Their design is only 25 feet in between each and every building. Again, they are squishing things together to maximize the number of units. The height of buildings should be no more than 30 feet, and this project is designed to be 38 feet tall. That is a 27% increase from the current guideline. Again, another means to maximize their profits. I'll just finish up here. In closing, I know that if this were your neighborhood, you would be here fighting against this parcel to ensure the character of your neighborhood is maintained. Please don't allow this developer to maximize his profits off the backs of the residents of Superstition Springs and ignore every zoning ordinance that's intended to make our Mesa a better Mesa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Clayton. Next I have is Stacy Shepard.
My name is Stacy Shepard. I live at 7158 East Lomita Avenue. I've been a community member. We've lived here for 24 years in the same home, and we have totally enjoyed living where we live, and we haven't moved because of that. I reiterate everything that's been said. It's going to be said again, but I know they've come with their stats and all their studies and whatnot. I was at the November meeting. They did not answer the questions. They had comments to our questions that did not satisfy what we were asking. They just wanted to let us know that the luxury apartments were going to be beautiful. They were going to do what they wanted them to do. The rents were going to start at $2,000 and go up to $3,300. You know, we're in a bad economy. We haven't turned it around yet. And so that's going to cause problems of adding more people into one apartment than just a single family, which is going to be adding more parking. That's going to be a problem. All of it is a problem, but mostly the people have already talked about it. Those accidents on Guadalupe and Power are horrific. If that was your child, if that was your neighbor, you would not be wanting to add any more potential events like this to happen. Those are going to happen because of where we live right now and the students and things that happen are accidents. And they do happen. But why are we going to add to that? We shouldn't. We should care more for people than for property. We want those children to be safe. We want them to, parents to be confident that when their children go to school on their scooter or on their bike, that they are going to come home that day and not have to go pick them up at the hospital. Those are major, major concerns. I would ask that we take this item 3C and that we remove it from the consent to discuss and that we just move along. There's been other options. We would love to add it to Monterey Park. It would be awesome. We love our park and we could use more of it. There's only 4 pickleball courts. I'm a pickleball player. I would like more courts. It's hard enough to get them scheduled and to book, and we bring money into Mesa, not much, but by reserving those courts. There are other options, and I just ask that you consider them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. One thing, I'll just, because it's come up twice, I'll just say this real quick before I call the next name up. Just so everybody understands, like, from the consent agenda, everything is placed on consent until it's pulled off. So we are actually not on consent agenda. Because it's being discussed today, it's not on consent. So I just want everybody to understand that, just to make sure, yeah, that's why we're doing this. So if it was on consent, we wouldn't be talking about it. So if that helps, just clarify, because I've heard a couple of people say that. So next one, Cheryl Kirby.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Kirby, and I live at 6917 East Mirabelle Avenue in Mesa in the Superstition Springs community, and we were one of the first people that moved in there 26 years ago. So as you can see, we're all very passionate about this and our feelings about it and how it is not good for our community, for our families, for the city of Mesa. So, you know, the renderings were beautiful. One thing I noticed that it didn't depict, though, is the amount of traffic on Power and Guadalupe all day long, but especially in the morning with the kids and in the afternoon. So I'm not sure if some of you have made any decision about what you're thinking about this based on the information you have. My hope is that if you have, it's a specific dead end no. And I know that you have a very important job, and it's not to be taken lightly, and that job is to make wise, prudent, and protective decisions for the city, for the communities, and for the residents of the communities. So I would ask you, which of those three factors do you consider the most important? I propose that it's the protection aspect of any decision. If you approve this item, would it be a wise decision? Perhaps from a business standpoint, because it would provide more revenue for the city. Would it be a prudent decision? That's questionable, and that's why we're here to discuss it. Would it be a protective decision? Absolutely no way, no, it would not be. You know, my 96-year-old mother, who has done a lot of investigative research in her life, has always said, show me the facts before she makes any decision. And I think a lot of people have given you the facts here. Now, as residents, we could have hired all the professionals to do all the stats and everything that the applicant has done. But, you know, we don't really have the resources to do that. So we're hoping that just hearing our voices is enough to convince you to not even consider this. You can always have different facts, as you know, that we've lived with for many, many years in the political arena, period, regardless. And two different sides completely. In this case, you have the company's facts, the applicant's facts, whose business is to make money, and then to have the residents' facts, whose only purpose is to stand against that which will endanger the safety and protection of their families. It is a pure motivation with no monetary gain or underlying benefit. The only way to know the facts is if all of you, as someone mentioned, were actually going to the site and watching or sending a drone over at those times of day, especially when the kids are out, and to determine for yourself the validity of each side's argument. There are 5 schools within a half-mile radius of the site, of the proposed site, one of which has a huge traffic problem when dropping off and picking up students. Parents are literally parked on Power Road, just south of Guadalupe, and it stops traffic. And Power is a huge highway, not highway, thoroughfare. Thank you. Also, as part of your research would be to review the accident occurrences in the area, and you've heard some of them already, and the school's capacity that would be affected by additional residences. You may have already received this information from both sides, But again, how do you know which side is presenting the facts and which ones are actually truthful and not just supporting their side of the argument? I understand that you can't do that kind of research on all the things that are brought on the agenda. However, if all you have to do is recognize that one argument is to gain while the other has nothing to gain. I'm guessing that all or most of you have family, and your number one priority is to protect them over and above anything else. In your capacity as some city officials, I think it's your responsibility to protect the residents above any monetary gain for any particular company, and to take into consideration the things that everybody here has been so passionate about. It's bad for our community. It's a beautiful facility. It just needs to be somewhere else other than in the area that they want to put it in. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirby. Appreciate your time. Where's the name? Angel Levine. I hope I said that one right.
Hello,
Did I
thank
do
you.
that all right?
I don't want to waste your time and let you know, repeat everything that everybody said, but I do ditto it.
You're
My name
good.
is Angel Levine. I'm at
Ditto work.
7245 East Navarro. And I do have to state, though, that what Ms. Kirby said about the presentation is correct. There are some falsehoods in that. The public was not notified of the second meeting. It was sent after the fact. We have the stamped envelope and everything. They did apologize, but it still, that doesn't help when we're trying to look for information and to attend and let people know how we feel. They also stated that the HOA is on board, and if you look in your packet, I'm pretty sure you have an email from the management company of our HOA. They are not on board. The other thing too is we've lived in Superstition Springs coming up on 15 years, and I remember 10, 15 years ago, right where those softball fields are that were on the map, that's where they wanted to put a apartment complex. It was declined at that time. It was declined due to the overflow of students, but also we have an apartment complex that they failed to put on your map right across the street, and they have leasing available. So, and if you were to actually go around the block, you know, any which way, you're going to find an apartment complex on every single corner. They are all looking for renters. So it's not a need, and so I feel that that is something that should be highlighted. So the city was able to come in and purchase that property and then do the park expansion, which we all approved in 2014, 2016, I believe it was. And at that time, the property owner for this project was offered a reasonable price for his property. And then not once, but twice, I believe, he was offered that. And he held on to it. So now we're looking at having this driveway that intersects with the junior high driveway. And so you're going to have, it's just not gonna be pretty. My son was hit by a drunk driver right over there. We have had way too many incidents there. And it's just, it's not the right property for this project. This property should have been acquired, maybe fought harder. I don't know. I don't know what those discussions looked like, but it's definitely, residents have been paying attention to this property for 10 to 15 years. We're not going away. We don't want it. We don't like it. And there's a lot of valid reasons. So they can definitely sell you a project that all looked great and sounded fantastic, but on our end, it is definitely not worth the repercussions and the consequences that will come from it. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Levine. Is there anyone else online? Oh, we're good on that, okay. All right, looks like that's my last speaker card, so I appreciate everybody being here to speak on that. So with that, I will request the applicant to come up. Where is it? I'm trying to see. Oh, there he is, okay. You're hiding. Yes, we would close public comment. Go ahead.
Chairs, and thank you to all the neighbors who took the time out of the day to come and have spent effort looking and reviewing this application. We appreciate the interest and ultimately the The goal here is to provide a good project that yields, kids that are going to school with us, that are going to church with us, and that are integrating into the community. One of the key things as I think about school drop-offs and pickups, it's clearly something that is faced by the community throughout Mesa and this specific area. But when I go and drop my kid off to Highland Elementary School in Mesa, there's too many Highlands. At Highland Elementary, in the afternoon, it's busy. People have to be aware and they have to be safe and cognizant. We have a slide here that, maybe I can show it here. Wrong way. Thank you. So our analysis in the red here, you're going to see this is the traffic generated from the Highland Elementary or Highland Junior High School, and would be sected at the drop-off and the pickup times of the day. In blue, you're seeing the study of a multifamily project, our multifamily traffic impact at those hours of the day, and you'll see that that key aspect, the peak hour in the afternoon, doesn't align where people are getting home from work later than the school times, and so there's not an overlap in the afternoon. And in the morning time, just that comparison, I hope, illustrates the impact that we'll have on the current situation, which we don't disagree that it's crazy. Pickup times are crazy at our schools. One of the questions was to talk about kind of design. There is a wall between our projects and the park, so there's a nice view fence and character there. We did put a lot of effort into the elevated design standards for this project. One of the key considerations when you're asking for a PAD to modify those setbacks is why are you modifying it? And so in a situation where you're building maybe multifamily next to single family and if you're asking for a reduction between those type of uses, then you're going to have to provide really elevated PAD standards to justify that, because it's causing a direct effect related to the deviation you're asking for. So in this case, the deviations we're asking for really are technical in nature. They're not having an effect on the surrounding properties, but yet we've provided superior qualities to justify that. The history of the site, the owner and prior owners have worked with the city regarding the use of that land when the city was building the park, and the ownership offered to provide the park to the city at a market rate standard, and the city just determined that portion of land wasn't worth taxpayer dollars to invest in that. And so the rights of this owner don't stop at that negotiation table. And what we're proposing here today really is something that mitigates and lessens the concerns related to traffic. I hear about a food truck proposal, and I think, oh my goodness, yes, that would be awesome. It would also be awesome so everyone would come and visit, and it would be a high traffic use, much higher than a multifamily project. The notice, clearly the word got out, and we've, it's not the first time that these notices have been sent out, and so we did our due diligence, and we've sworn affidavits to that notice, and glad that the word did get out through social media as well. With that, I think that's kind of some of the key questions that were raised and some of the aspects. Happy to answer any questions the board might have related to that.
You good, question-wise? Go for it.
I thought I read somewhere in one of the comments that at one point, or I don't know if it's current or it had been a future discussion or previous discussion, that turning out from this project onto Guadalupe would be a right turn only. Is that the case, or is it not the case?
Member Carpenter, the access point will be a full access, and so there will be right turns, left turns, both in and out of the project will be permitted.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of, well, I'll just say my comments right now, but yeah, thanks.
And in terms of design of that access point, with having the canal there is the canal easement rights prevent, different design qualities, but it'll be up to standards of the city of Mesa, and the when you think about it, for commercial development, it's going to be a similar quality where they would want full access and need that.
Anything for you guys? Question?
So I guess I have a number of things. Certainly folks brought up a lot about traffic, safety, crashes. So just from my own background and knowledge of what's out there, and regardless of the study, I certainly looked over the study that was put together, also looked at other resources that are out there. Based on what I see, and that's not just what the applicant provided, but just data that's out there in terms of traffic volumes and counts, I can tell you this much: these roadways are designed for much more capacity than what is currently out there today. The city builds them with a vision that there will be more traffic. Certainly, especially Guadalupe Road at 12,000, that is significantly low for what an arterial typically carries. These roadways have capacity upwards of 50,000 trips. Certainly, I'm not discounting the fact that these areas may be safe, or that type of data is not available to me that I can look up and know. Also, I just want to say the roadways certainly have the capacity to take on this project. Another thing I wanted to point out, there's discussions about how this is zoned for retail. The residential that's being proposed, it is a fact that this residential will result in less trips than retail development. I mean, that is just the way it works. Commercial development generates far more trips. So I'm not debating those items, but I would love if someone would be able to, and that's not, I don't know that it would be on the part of the applicant to be able to just kind of talk through the experiences of this intersection. I know we heard from neighbors, but I would love to hear in terms of the safety or traffic or school operations. I don't know if that turns back to the city, but I'd love to hear what's happening in terms of traffic in this area. I mean, I don't know if you would be able to speak to that too.
I do know that the City of Mesa traffic engineer is represented, and I assume they'd be happy to kind of discuss their perspective in their review of this. Also, Paul Basha from Summit Engineering. I might ask him just to come up for a couple moments to share his perspective on this.
Right. So some of these things that the residents have brought up with the school drop-off pickup, I don't know how those procedures work or how it's. I'm not there in a drone and seeing that. I'm not knowing about the crashes. Those are data that I don't have access to in the safety in this area. So I would love for someone to be able to address some of those concerns.
Paul?
And we certainly have heard from the residents, so.
Thank you, Chair Ayers and members of the Planning and Zoning Board. My name is Paul Bash. I'm a consulting traffic engineer. I work with Summit Land Management. Half of my career, I've been a public agency traffic engineer for about 24 years with the City of Scottsdale, and then also with the Washington State Department of Transportation. I also have been a consultant for approximately half my career. For 25 years, I taught traffic engineering part-time at Arizona State University. Do you have any projector from paper?
No.
Evidently not.
No.
I will just talk. Board Member Blakeman, you asked about safety. We did examine the Arizona Department of Transportation collision data. No.
Anything you got on there?
No, thanks. Thanks, John. We did examine the Arizona Department of Transportation traffic data, and that has collision data from every single intersection in the state of Arizona. It doesn't depend on a particular city. And in 2023, the intersection of Power and Guadalupe had 26 collisions in those 12 months. Every collision is bad, and I understand that. And it troubles me that two of your speakers mentioned that they have family members who have been involved in collisions. Believe me, every single traffic engineer wants to prevent traffic collisions, and that was my number one goal when I was a city traffic engineer. Nonetheless, collisions are parts of life. I wish they weren't, but they are. I wish everybody obeyed the speed limit, but they don't. I wish everybody drove 25 miles per hour and not a mile per hour faster. That would prevent collisions too, but we don't. Collisions happen. Power Guadalupe, that intersection had 26 collisions in the year 2023. We examined every collision within about a 3-mile radius. Higley and Baseline had 42 collisions. Power and Elliott had 32. Higley and Broadway had 31. Sossaman and Broadway had 31. Greenfield and Southern had 30. Sossaman and Baseline had 27. Those intersections had more collisions than Power and Guadalupe. Then there were 7 intersections in the area that had fewer collisions than Power and Guadalupe. Higley and Guadalupe had 24. Power and Baseline had 23. Higley and Southern had 20. Greenfield and Baseline had 19. Greenfield and Broadway had 18. Sossaman and Southern had 16. Greenfield and Guadalupe had 15. Again, it's unfortunate, but collisions happen. Power and Guadalupe is kind of the midpoint of collisions in the area. I told you 2023 statistics. I have 2022 statistics as well. They're essentially the same. Those are my comments, Board Member Blakeman, regarding collisions at the Power Guadalupe intersection. I'd be happy to try and answer any other questions the board may have.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Anything else? Traffic? No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. From a staff perspective, yeah. Let's have that.
Chair, we have Ryan here from the transportation team.
Appreciate you being here today, Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. Ryan Hudson. I am with the City of Mesa Transportation Department, the city traffic engineer. And I can speak a little bit to safety, just to kind of tack on to what Mr. Basher was talking about. The City of Mesa is actually currently undergoing a comprehensive safety action plan, which looks around the citywide, also includes intersection analysis throughout the city as well, really all aimed at reducing and ultimately eliminating serious injury and fatal crashes throughout the city, citywide. So as part of that, we do a lot of crash analysis, very detailed crash analysis, that doesn't look just at sheer numbers. Looking at sheer numbers of how many crashes that occur does not tell the whole story of a traffic safety trend or a traffic safety issue. There's a lot of other facets that have to come into play, including the characteristics of the intersection, how much vehicles are entering the intersection, and what types of collisions may be happening, injury severity, violations, things that come into play there. That's all to say that this particular intersection of Guadalupe and Power is one that we analyze through our traffic engineering group, and will continue to do so. And if there are strategies to mitigate any trends and make the intersection operate more safely, we will pursue those things independent of any sort of development that is happening adjacent to or near the intersection. So hopefully that speaks a little bit to the traffic safety perspective and side of things. I know there was also some questions about the school operations and the school traffic. Certainly any type of school, unfortunately, there's just a lot of parent drop-off and pickup that happens as opposed to, walking to school. It's just kind of the nature of where we kind of are at this point. So there's a large amount of vehicles that comes in for pickups and drop-offs every day that there's school. The circulation at the school, primarily this is Highland Junior High, which is the big generator. They come in off of the driveway that does not align with the proposed development. It's the driveway to the east of that. They circulate to pick up, and then they come back out where there's a traffic signal for the school students to cross, as well as it serves the parents to come off of the site as well. So the circulation itself and the driveway location for the proposed development doesn't raise any concerns from a traffic safety perspective.
Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Any questions? No. All right, thank you, I appreciate it. Any other questions for the board, for the applicant at all, or staff? Jason, nothing? the applicant?
There was also a few folks who mentioned the public outreach, not getting notified or getting notified the day before or after that. Can someone speak to that as well or address how that worked out?
I'm happy to take that one, or staff can help as well. Chair Blake, or Member Blakeman. The notice for a neighborhood meeting gets sent out to residents within 1,000 feet and to HOAs within a mile. And so that notice requirement was met with this. And I know that it was received and further published on social media platforms. The City of Mesa requires a notice of 500 feet for planning and zoning meetings, and then as well to the HOAs. And so that notice went out. Because neighbors aren't directly adjacent to us, I know that number of actual letters being sent out is lower than in other cases, but I know the word got out and we followed the rules of the city on those notice requirements.
Some of the folks seem to indicate that the notice and the day after, right, there was one that was like the 18th and then the 19th was the actual meeting. How did that time out, or is that?
Member Blakeman, I haven't looked at it. I'm happy to look at it. I'm not the postman, so I don't control the mail, and so I know things can happen on that front. But I know the notices on our end were put into the mail on the date as required. So.
The postmark says November 13th.
And I'm pretty sure I got an email.
And it says November 13th, and the meeting was the very next day. It's postmarked this day. I'm not going to get it until after the meeting.
Again, I'm not the postman, but
Gotcha.
the notice that I just looked at was for our second neighborhood meeting, which is, again, that's above and beyond the legal requirements of the city. And so I think that's important to consider with
Sure.
that specific situation.
Thank you.
Can staff confirm that the legal obligations for public notice have been met with these notices?
Sure. So Chair Ayers, board members, the community participation plan, the requirements for those notices are mailed out by the applicants. The city takes the responsibility of the legal notices for our public hearings. This is the first we're hearing about the timing issue related to that notice. We were not aware of that until today.
Thank you.
And if I could add, I'm sorry, they did have 2 meetings. The citizen participation plan requires 1, so that second meeting was a second optional meeting. So if I could add that also.
Anything else? You guys good over this for the applicant? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So nothing else for staff? Anything else for staff? No, any questions for staff? Okay. Okay, so at this point, we've closed public comments. Oh, sorry, guys, we can't hear. So what we're going to do here is now this is when the board will have discussion. And so I want to say one quick thing before we kind of dive into it. So everybody here, just for your kind of information, every single one of us, we are not elected officials. We are not City of Mesa employees. We are volunteers that do this. We're in the community. I had 2 brothers and a sister go to Highland High School. I know this very area extremely well. I have a sister that lives just down the street. So every single one of us are adjacent. We're volunteers here to try to help the community. We have the same passions you guys do. So just bear that in mind as we try to, do what we can here. We also have a very kind of, and I wouldn't say rigid, but we have a certain lane that we stay in as a planning and zoning board. And so we're just making a recommendation today, whether it's to go forward, we recommend it to be approved or denied. That goes to the city council from that point, where they'll make that final decision because it is a council use permit, right? So just bear that in mind as we go into the discussion. I just thought that was important. And by the way, all of us have experience or jobs, like real jobs, outside of this. So, for everything from design to traffic engineering, we actually have somebody on the board that is a traffic engineer. So we maybe don't know what we're doing about some things, but some things we have familiarity, and we've been doing this for a little while. So we appreciate you guys being here. We also we understand the passion. Know that. So I'm gonna open up for anyone to have conversation. I'll just start in since I've already started talking so much, but, so this one, it's a tough one. It is a site, just so everybody understands too, when we get a lot of information on all these cases, as you guys can imagine. This was originally zoned as residential, this site. It was changed to be LC, or limited commercial, in 2010. And since then, it sat empty since then, right? It's been tried to be developed. Whether or not they were selling to the city of the park, all those things, that's kind of outside of our control, but we do see that, and just so you understand that. And so as a commercial, limited commercial, my thinking on this as a board is this is not gonna develop as a limited commercial. It is not a viable commercial property in most cases, right? It doesn't have the accessibility, it doesn't have the visibility and access. And so it's gonna sit like this forever and ever until something happens. And one of the things on this one is, so use by right, residential is allowed on the site. It is, right? So what I like about the CUP, if that's kind of moving forward, is it allows it to be temporary. And I say that with very big air quotes because it allows the city a backdoor. It's not a permanent zoning change, right? And so that makes some sense to me. So from a use perspective, residential, and I know a lot of people, you guys don't believe, residential is a much less impact from a standpoint of traffic than any other use that we could put there. Yes, the park would be great, but I just don't see that. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at this right now, is just understanding that, and the other thing is too, just from a design of a multi-family project, we're not seeing an ask for reduction in parking. We're not, a lot of the things that we see that we have issues with from multifamily, we're not seeing those here. So I'm not sure what you guys are all want to talk through any of this.
Sure. Well, I shared a little bit earlier, kind of the stance from a traffic standpoint. So I guess you probably could guess I'm the traffic engineer sitting on the board.
I didn't want to point it out.
Straight numbers, just from a factual standpoint, a lot of this stands up. The traffic study that was done was very thoroughly done. From just sheer numbers, this checks out in terms of its appropriateness for zoning and land use. It checks out in my box. Certainly, that's not speaking to the safety and crash, and it sounds like the city of Mesa is looking into this. I'm certain that they will listen to what you guys have to say, and if there's specific things going on. There's so much more than just volume that results in serious crashes or pedestrian fatalities or whatever, pedestrian crashes. There's so much more. There's a school involved. There's so many things. It's not just volume of traffic. For that matter, during COVID, when volumes went down, the severity of crashes went up, and the amount of crashes per vehicles actually went up. So actually, more traffic led to less crashes to some extent. So because of that friction. So I'm not saying that directly, but I'm saying crashes are very complex, and I guess I'm not directly tying this development to more crashes. More traffic, in my thought is the city of Mesa has built out this to a 6-lane arterial roadway. Certainly there are 4-lane arterial roadways out there, but this one's a 6. Their vision and their intention of doing that is that there is traffic coming and more, and it should head towards its limit of 50,000 someday, one day. If not, a smaller facility would have been built in this area. So that said, what this is adding to the volumes of 12,000, this is just part of the city's plan. It's part of it. Now, certainly, it's been zoned for different things. I agree with Ben that, where we sit today is not a great plot of land for commercial. And where we sit in times today, commercial is also struggling, just in general, let alone a property that has even more restrictions. So that's my 2 cents on this. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in.
I'll let Troy have the last word. Definitely can understand and appreciate the concerns of the community. As I've sit here and kind of digest and absorb the messages and the stories and understanding the unique aspects of this intersection, it sounds like no matter what, the traffic's going to be bad. And so, I should say this intersection is bad. It is currently. So I don't know that adding this necessarily raises the problem. I think it's, to kind of echo something that I'm hearing between the lines from Jamie, is I don't know what the school district is doing to help mitigate this. It sounds like with Highland High School and then this junior high, and then the other schools around, and that weird nexus between City of Mesa, the county, and the school districts all kind of being different. I wonder if better traffic control as far as like crossing guards and that sort of thing to help push parents certain ways through the schools is maybe a better approach for the traffic issue to help keep the kids safe. We live in a neighborhood where we have the high school, the junior high, and the elementary all within 1 mile, touching each other on neighborhood streets, and then we've got major arterials on either side here in downtown Mesa, and it's scary sometimes to think about what could happen. But I think the school district does a good job with putting crossing guards at each side that prevent and makes the kids more visible to keep the drivers aware, and that includes the high school drivers. To echo what Ben said, I think from a zoning standpoint, whenever we get multifamily, there's always the ask for parking reductions and the neighborhood concern with arterial street parking or neighborhood street parking. I saw that in the comments that were received, that there was concerns that the residents would be parking in the park, or if there was a right turn only, that they would be then driving down Monterey Avenue and cutting through the neighborhoods. I could certainly appreciate that, but I do think it would be much more minimal of an impact than you can actually think with the number of drivers that would potentially be going east on Guadalupe had they had to do that. Definitely a weird nexus on this one with the various concerns there, but a lot to consider.
You have no further comment? Anybody want to move for a motion on it?
I'll make a motion and we can vote on it.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Motion for ZON 24000708, Park North multifamily, 5± acres located approximately 275 feet east of the northeast corner of South Power Road and East Guadalupe Road, rezoned from limited commercial with planned area development overlay to limited commercial with a planned area development overlay PAD, council use permit and site plan review for 120 unit multi-residence development. Staff recommendation approval with conditions.
What is your recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
So we have a motion to approve.
Chair, just to be clear for the record, the motion would be to recommend for council.
Thank you. Okay, so.
Motion is to recommend.
Motion to recommend to city council approval with conditions.
So we have a motion. Is there a second on the board?
Second.
Okay, so we'll vote. Okay, so this moves forward. Again, just want to reiterate for you guys, this is just a recommendation from the P&Z board. This still goes to city council. So we appreciate all you guys being here. We really do. I thank you. Is there anything from staff that we need to hit on this one?
Chair Ayers, no additional updates. Thank you.
With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you again, everyone.